Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Roland, who is an intermediate photographer from England. Roland says that he was drawn to this scene on an overcast day because of the water droplets that were reflecting off of the oak leaf right here. Roland says that he came in his post-processing work and actually desaturated the lily pads to bring out the leaf and the other leaves here as sort of the main subject. And Roland shot this with a Canon 40D using an 18-200 Tamron zoom at 200 millimeters at ISO 800. Roland stopped down to f6.3 and exposed the file for 1/125th of a second. And under questions and comments, and I'm paraphrasing in sort of a very rough way here, Roland essentially had a question about his crop. He said that he's already cropped this from the top and he left these leaves in right here to try and balance at the top the leaves with the leaves at the bottom. Then he felt like this part of the image, all of this black in the water, was overwhelming. And so we'll get to the idea of the crop in just a minute. We'll get right into the critique. I love Roland's main idea in this image. And I also love his idea of desaturating the lily pads. You know, these leaves are an earth tone. It's down and dead oak leaves, and they're just sort of this winter brown. And by taking the green out of here, even though I can't see the original, I get the idea. And it really is helping to make the oak leaves come forward. And it's also just sort of creating this feeling or an archetype of everything sort of somehow kind of being in a phase of dying. And I think from a harmony of conceptual idea standpoint, that works really beautifully in the image. The other thing that I like a lot about what Roland's done here is he's taken a subject that he really likes, that draws his eye, and then he's framing this in a way so that the viewer can make a journey to get here. And to me, that makes this a lot more powerful than maybe just coming in and just getting right on top of it, where there's really not anything else to go back and forth. The other thing that's so beautiful to me when I look at this is that the idea of the leaf, creates, particularly in this one leaf, this real sort of archetypal shape of the oak leaf. And then you've got the water droplets that helps this to be a really beautiful subject. But what's so cool is that the water droplets, because of the way Roland has framed this, and he's got one lily pad here that almost completely finishes in terms of the idea. The disc shape of the water droplets rhymes this part of the lily pad, and then you've got the suggestion of another disc in here, and partial disc up here, partial disc here, inside of here, all those rhythms. But then when you look at the patterning, in the rest of the surface of the lily pad, you see shapes and ideas that play off of the outside shape of the oak leaf, and then within this one oak leaf that's so graphic, where you're seeing the veins of the leaf, that really, in my mind, plays off of this one stem that comes out with a lily pad. A lot of really beautiful rhythms in the way that Roland has presented this. Let's talk about the crop for a minute. Roland is saying that he's included these leaves at the top in his crop to balance the leaves at the bottom. And I definitely can see that, just from the basic standpoint that it's the same subject. And because of that, you have the same color and some of the same shapes. But for me, this actually ends up becoming a distraction at the top part of the image. Because what happens for me is not only is this idea very sharp, but the way Roland is sort of shooting down on this, the focus really doesn't appear to start to fall off. Even though it's falling off a little bit in here, it doesn't appear to fall off until you get to these leaves. And a big part of that is because this is so sharp. It's so contrasty. It just has such an edge to it in so many different ways that when you get to these leaves, and they're not sharp, but they're the same as these guys. And when you also sort of look and see that these are spread out in a very graphic way, these are all sort of on top of each other. These, for the most part, are getting to finish within the image, and these are cropped. This, to me, just starts to become the one thing that doesn't fit with everything else. And what's really interesting to me from a cropping standpoint is that when I just looked without thinking about it very much, when I just said, let me get the cropper out and just come just under those leaves and take them out and just crop right there and see what happens, I was amazed that what happened for me from a visual standpoint is now this beautiful rhythm of sort of the edge of the oak leaf, this positive space shape, starts to do a really beautiful job now of rhyming the leading edge of the negative space down here in the corner, and that moves in a real dynamic way in this image. And that also ends up setting up another relationship. This is almost a square crop now, and you end up with almost 50% in the lower left of smooth edge as far as the way negative space deals with the edge of the frame. And then in the top right, coming out on that angle, you've got the other half of the image that has the pattern of either the oak leaves or the lily pads. And those two things, if we just split the image down the middle, play off of each other in sort of a 50-50 way. And this crop also starts to have sort of this movement playing off of this movement in kind of a 50-50 way, in the way this is coming out of the corner down here and the way this is coming out of the corner up here, sort of cropped and cut off. The other thing about getting rid of those leaves at the top now is that the rhythm that I described earlier, with the disc of the water droplets playing off of the disc and playing off of the pattern in here, and the vein playing off of the stem, all of that to me comes forward more now because you don't have the sort of leaves there competing with that idea of simple rhythm playing back and forth between the two subjects that initially seem to be very different. And the only other thing that I could see doing here is to make this even a little bit more dramatic, add a little bit more of a black point. And very easy to do that. I'd just go to levels and pull in on the left hand side, and then I'd probably apply that locally in a local way and just create a little bit of a gradient. I fill the mask with black. I'm going to hit the brush tool. I'm going to go to 40%, and I'm going to give more of that adjustment sort of at the bottom part of the image, and not quite so much at the top, and I'm sort of keeping it off of the lily pads altogether. And then I could see doing one other thing just to see what I thought of it, to play around with sort of adding one more dimension of color, maybe bring back the green in a dynamic place on the lily pads. So I'm just going to go to Hue Saturation, get my sampler active, click right there and pull to the right inside of the image to bring up the saturation on that potential green spot. Fill the mask with black, go to the brush tool, about 30% on the opacity, and just pop this shape in here a few times right there to just bring in a little bit of green, and then maybe turn that down. I feel like I went too far. It's something that's real subtle, but I might play around with in a few other areas too, just making that green come forward just a little bit to give this kind of a third dimension of color that could play off of the muted brown. Love what Roland has done here, and I apologize, it's not going to be practical for me to get back to the real crop here. So we'll just look at it from here. I love the leaf with the water droplets as the main subject. I love the idea of desaturating the green in the background, and love Roland's framing to put this into a beautiful context with some great rhythms. I want to thank Roland for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.